Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Hello, you're welcome to today's edition of Money Radio on Leadership Podcast. Money Radio is a program that brings you the latest development in Nigeria's business and economy cycles and also issues of business around the world. My name is Innocent Odo, and today we are taking a look at the industrial development segment of the Money Radio, and we are taking a look at the need to revive the Ajaokuta Steel Company as a panacea for Nigeria's industrial development. From its history, this particular steel plant has taken a toll on the nation's funds. Unfortunately, after about 40 years, Nigerians are yet to see the benefit of this important plant that was established in 1979, and of course, it almost like it started operating in 1983. But several years down the line, Ajaokuta Steel Company has not produced one sheet of steel, even when its peers in other parts of the world have taken the lead in the steel development around the world. So these are the issues that we're going to look at today. Why do we continue to have this kind of challenge when Nigeria is supposed to produce this steel? And Nigeria, of course, from records, imports about $2.3 billion worth of steel annually. And this is a country that has one of the largest deposits of iron ore in Africa. It's ironic that Nigeria, having this kind of resources, will continue to import steel and allied products from the international market. And so I'm here in the studio to do justice to this very important topic. I have experts in the field. To my right, I have Kes Hammond. Kes, you're welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
We also have Paul Wadima. Paul, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you for having
me. Let me turn it over to you, Paul. Ajaokuta Steel Company. This has featured a lot in several analyses, several news items over the years. Yet, the story remains the same. Where are we getting it wrong?
Thank you for this question. I think we are playing politics with it. And when you start a project with politics, the good intentions may be derailed. The Ajaokuta Steel mill, we are told, as I talk to you now, that it has reached up to 98% completion. That what is stopping it from going full blast is just 2%. So you ask yourself, what is involved in this 2% that we cannot be able to do? This is a project that started since 42 years ago. The political will, corruption has been the major problem, stifling this very important sector of our economy taking off. Because steel is key to any nation's industrialization. No country can industrialize without having a steel company like Ajaokuta. And God has already blessed this country. We have the raw material to make it a reality in abundance. So it's just the political will is not there. Because if the political will is there, something you started since 1979, we ought to have been a major steel producing nation by now. That is the reality. Because and you could have imagined how much we would have generated by now as a major industrial nation. Now we are talking about diversification of the economy. People are talking about agriculture. This would have been among our key diversification projects.
Yes.
Because there's virtually nothing that is done in the world today without steel. You can't produce car without steel. Yes. You can't produce aeroplane without steel. You can't produce bridge without steel. No railway without steel. Virtually every means of technology that is driving the world today is steel related.
Yes.
So if you have it, then you can be sure that there is a ready market for you. And countries that are serious, you see where they are in terms of industrialization, in terms of export of steel material. So we are not serious. we have not shown as a nation that thinks. We have to tell ourselves the truth. If not, Ajaokuta State should have been up and running before now.
Ajaokuta should have been up and running before now.
Yes.
Now, Kes, there's a recent experience I had some time ago when I traveled to one of these Asian countries. And there's this steel company in South Korea. I think they call it POSCO or something like that. They actually started at the same time with the Ajaokuta Steel Company, several years ago, with production of about 1.3 million tons of liquid steel per annum. Now that's a company, that steel company in South Korea produces over nearly 30 million tons of liquid steel per annum, and they are still moving on. So they have actually captured the steel market around the world. Ajaokuta, as we're talking, hasn't produced one single sheet of steel in over 40 years.
The South Koreans, when you talk about the South Koreans, these people planned their economy. They have an economic blueprint. They had an economic blueprint, how to develop. In the 1960s, 1950s, 1960s, Nigeria was more developed than a place like South Korea. Those places were just like villages. But when their war ended, they developed an economic blueprint, and they followed it to the letter. They had development as their focus, and of course, they started from agriculture, and then later on they started with assembling, and then they decided we must develop, we must produce, producing ship, producing cars, like you see this Kia, Hyundai, a number of other ones. These trucks, some of them come from South Korea. These people are actually ship builders, and it's from their steel. So, like you said, Nigeria not just went into this, the resources were there. You remember this former head of state who said that Nigeria
has you don't want to do with money.
What to do with money?
Yes.
And like Mr. Uwadina said, look, this country has about the second highest deposit of iron ore in Africa. So why are we at this level? Why? It's just political will. The political will is not there. It's like there are people who in power who, when certain things do not favor them, or when they don't see anything to gain from it personally, they just don't push it. And I will give this administration some credit for at least getting some of these old back on track, and making sure that he invests in them. The president, in today's papers, he said, like if you read leadership today, one of the news in there is that President Buhari intends to finish up all of his frontline projects before his administration comes to in 2023. The Minister of Steel and Development, Olamilekan Adegbiti, he also said sometime in July, Ajaokuta must be up and running before this administration comes to its 2023 mandate. So let's hope that this is not just mouth talk again, because most of what we have been having over the past decades, like this Ajaokuta, we're not talking about Mambila power plant right now because it's another issue. Yes. But this Ajaokuta, look, something that has the potential to generate 500,000 jobs, direct and indirect. If you look at the steel industry, just like Mr. Odima said, the steel industry, no country, if you talk about even the Singapores of this world, although it's a high-tech economy, they also are into this kind of you need steel to develop. Go to India, go to China, just any country, you need steel to develop. This is supposed to be the industrial hub of Africa, and this country needs steel to develop. And if we don't have those things, it's like we are going nowhere. Nigeria's situation when it comes to this Ajaokuta steel mill is it reminds me of um, an entrepreneur who bought a mine, a gold mine, somewhere in the US. He bought it for a handsome amount, and he dug, and dug, and he got discouraged. He decided to sell that mine for little or nothing, only to realize that the person he sold that mine to, it was remaining only 4 feet to hit gold. We are 98% done with this project. It's just remaining 2%. What is stopping Nigeria? The people who are developing, or the people who are contracted to build this steel, are still available. The Russians, although I hear that the company that actually undertook that project is is in Ukraine right now, but it's a former Soviet Union. It's a Soviet technology, and so they have that technology there, and they can do. They can come and complete this program, this project. Although there will be some latest technology
yes.
that they may fit into that.
That's what some analysts are actually saying. That,
yes, but these people are still alive and they know how to fit in those things. And I'm happy.
After
Case is talking about the minister promising that the Ajaokuta will be finished before they leave office in 2023. But there are some indications that they are just playing politics. Let me give you a typical example.
Okay.
Because of this COVID-19, federal government is going to spend 836 million naira to build oxygen plants in the 36 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory. Now, there's an organization which is committed to the revitalization of Ajaokuta Steel. He said, wait a minute, Ajaokuta Steel can provide these oxygen plants you are talking about having in all the federal. Why don't you, with a little amount of money,
finish
not
it
up
up
to what you want to go and spend in the 36 states of the Federation? Are you getting it?
Yes.
Give it to Ajaokuta Steel. Even at this, they are 98%. They could be able to produce this oxygen we are looking for to handle the issue of COVID-19. Where was the minister when this issue was being talked about? As somebody who is committed to the revitalization of the Ajaokuta steel industry. Are you getting it? That's when he would have said something. Okay, he was at the cabinet when they were talking about building all these plants in the 36 states of the Federation. And he ought to have known, as the minister of the steel industry, he's supposed to have known that.
yes.
That,
That's a kind of lack of priority.
So what did he say in that meeting?
Is it lack of priority?
It's lack of priority. That is
just getting to what Case was talking about. People always looking for their personal interests. People looking for their personal interests instead of national interest or group interest.
Okay, there's another thing that Case has simply talked about Buhari's intentions to ensure that most of the projects that he inherited are completed by 2023. You made mention of that, and from available records, about 20 billion naira have been allocated for the Ajaokuta Steel Company since 2016 up to now, and that probably have driven the process of the completion to that 98% we're talking about. So if we already have that 98%, now there are also some other challenges that have been thrown up by people saying that even the technology that existed at that time, has changed. A lot of things need to change. So I do not know the kind of technology they are using to drive the 98% process now, if it is actually going to help us in the long run after they complete the project.
An iron is an iron. Moving an iron or the technology in getting a machine to work this way or that way is one thing. Take, for example, the car you drive. That car has an engine. That engine is made of iron, but there are some electronic parts of it that give instruction to the engine, and the engine moves. So it's just to fit in those things. I don't think it's going to cost much more, as in we are starting from 50% because technology has evolved and it has negated the 98% we have reached. I don't think so. There is just it may just be to do some fittings and bring in just those new technology or those computerized, fit in those computerized.
All right. If you're just joining us, we're taking a look at the need to revive the Ajaokuta Steel Company as a panacea for Nigeria's industrial development. And I've been in the studio with Kes Hammond and Paul Wadimba doing justice to this very important topic. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue with the discussion. Don't go away.
Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Welcome back. Before we went on that short break, Kes was trying to make a very valid point on the issues of the revitalization we're talking about. But there's something very fundamental in steel development, Paul, if I may come to you. Even last year, the Senate passed a resolution as a matter of urgent importance, urging the federal government to ensure that before the end of its tenure, they should put in place all necessary measures to ensure that they bring it to full capacity. Now, the question has always been, putting all the stakes together with all the optimism that they have expressed, are we sure that we're going to land at the promised land at the end of 2023? Even if we only have 2% left.
We can be able to do it because whatever the mind conceives, it can be actualized. But my worry is even the Senate that are advising the government to make sure that the steel company is completed before they leave office. What effort have they made in oversight to make sure that the money they are putting into Ajaokuta Steel, they're not just throwing in money there? Because sometimes you begin to wonder, something that just required only 2% completion, only 2%, then it becomes 100% completed. So what is the thing that is stopping this steel company from taking off? Part of the problem is in the National Assembly. If the National Assembly does their work very well, they could always call the executive to order and say, look, we have approved so and so amount of money for Ajaokuta Steel. Why are we not seeing the result that we expected? So if the National Assembly is serious, it can be done. But I hope they're not playing to the gallery, because at the end of the day, many of them will be thinking about the election and not about actually whether Ajaokuta is really working or not. Because Nigerian politicians are more concerned about winning the next election. But if they are statesmen, they should be able to do proper oversight. Like you are expressing concern about what kind of maintenance are they doing now? Because let us be frank about this. The technology of Soviet Union in 1979 or 1983 is far, far from what is required in modern steel industry today.
Yes.
So based on that, there's a need to also interrogate who are bringing the equipment and what kind of equipment they are bringing to install
Kind
at that place.
overhaul of the
Yes,
even in the,
because
even the workforce
there are some things you cannot even overhaul again. Some people are, if you know how the printing press used to be before and what it is now, there are some things you just can't do anymore. If you must, yes. Ajaokuta still may require some general overhaul, but whatever happened, they say that the thing has reached 98% completion. So we want it to produce, even if it's not able to produce at the level that steel industries or steel companies in other nations that has modern equipment can do. But at least let us see some steel being rolled out from there. Let manufacturing companies in Nigeria, okay, we in 2019 alone, Nigeria imported about $636 million worth of steel. Let us see a situation whereby that amount is given to Ajaokuta Steel and you supply it to Nigerian producers instead of throwing those monies away in form of importation. And you know how scarce dollar is now in this nation.
There's a point that I want to stress here while you were speaking. Delays can sometimes be dangerous, or delays can be costly. Some of the maintenance we're talking about right now that will need some change of parts because technology has evolved. If we did not delay, if the country did not delay the construction of Ajaokuta point to this level at 40 years on, these costs, this maintenance or turnaround costs wouldn't have been necessary because the thing would have been working and it may have generated enough money to maintain itself. But we are talking about 2021 technology now that is different from.
Because our leaders have been emotional in decision taking. Let me tell you why. Ajaokuta was started by Britain. That was the initial country that was helping them to do it.
All right.
At the end of the day, after the war, they now look up to Russia. Why? Because the Russia played a key role in helping the Nigerian government during the war. It was like a reward. The kind of things we do in Nigerian local politics. Somebody help you to get elected, even if it's not that qualified. Because if you look at the history of industrialization, you know the role that the British played using the steel industry to industrialize. The first industrial revolution took place in England. So they are the masters. Ordinarily, we ought to have relied on them, even if they didn't support us as effective as we wanted during the war, because of their technology, their knowledge of the steel industry.
Now, before, just because
perhaps
look at that
better.
Look there.
We have done better.
You see that those machines are rotting. They are rotting away.
So are these ones that
these ones have not produced anything.
These ones that are the 98% completion.
So with that kind of emotional decision taking, we now handed over the steel to the Russians. And you can see the geopolitical politics that international geopolitical politics that are going inside it. Maybe there was some sabotage from several quarters to make sure that we don't complete it. And our politicians played in. Yes. And at the end of the day, this is where we are today.
Okay.
On a lighter note, I hope I'm saying on a lighter note, but it's something coming from our mind. These Russians, there was a time the French were the colonial masters of Guinea.
Yes.
And the Guineans decided, look, we don't need your assistance. We don't need anything from you. That was under the late President Sekou Touré. Yeah. They decided to break ties with France. When they broke ties with France, France came and took away all of their assets, and they took, including bathroom tiles and commodes and all of that, took them away. And the Russians decided, we can fit in. We can give you aid also. And one of the things that the Russians gave the Guineans,
the French, or rather,
no.
Okay, Russians came in.
Guinea turned to Russia.
Okay.
Do you know one of the gifts the Russians gave the Guineans? ice breaking ice breaking machine. You know that machine used to clear snow when that was one of the machines they gave Guineas. Yeah. So some of these things, as Mr. Wodima is saying, that we turned to the Russians.
Yes.
I hope some of those machines are not some of the gifts that we're talking
And,
about.
and when we turn, but even when we after turning to the Russians, we didn't have the political will to pursue it because we didn't have goal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just like if any nation or individual that don't have goal is not going to achieve the purpose.
Yes, of course.
So there was no goal
Yeah.
to become an industrialized nation.
But right
Just
now,
one last
because
point.
of oil.
Gentlemen,
Because of oil.
yeah, gentlemen,
There
it
was
has
no-
become really, really, very, very important now that we actually revive this industry because of the situation on ground now. The economy is not doing too well, and there's this crave for diversification. And it is in this industry, this sector, that I think we have an advantage. We already have a project, a plant on ground that we cannot just exploit the iron ore that we have to push it forward. It has become incumbent on us to do that because you listen to the vice president speaking yesterday at the then you can see the passion with which he was talking about changing things and diversifying the economy. This is one aspect. It has become, whether the politicians like it now or not, they are supposed to, this is what they are mandated to do right away, because if we don't do it now, we cannot compete internationally. And if we don't compete internationally, we don't earn foreign exchange, and the naira continues to go down and it's going down. So going forward now, how do we do? Because we don't have time left again.
We must make sure that 2% that is remaining to complete Ajaokuta steel industry or steel company is given the necessary financial backup. National Assembly should see it as its only responsibility to this nation before 2023 that Ajaokuta steel rolling mill is rolling out steel. Government must look for money. Now, people are talking about borrowing. We have not heard how much they are borrowed and put inside that Ajaokuta steel. Because Ajaokuta steel is something that you can track its contribution if you borrow and put it at a very short run. Because if you start rolling out steel now, many companies that require steel to operate, as I told you, there about in 2019 alone, we imported almost $636 million worth of this. These are imports from Nigerian companies that use steel to produce things in this country. So if we can be able to address that, if National Assembly can make sure that this 2% that's remaining is this gap, the very small gap, if you ask me, this gap is filled. I think anybody that sees Nigeria in the next 10 years will know that we have a nation of thinking people.
Yes.
I want to add so that, if a proper audit is done about the viability of this Ajaokuta steel mill, if a proper audit is done, and it can be said that this thing is viable, it will generate funds. Nigeria, the federal government, does not need to go to any country or any institution to borrow money. Once creditors see that there is viability in this project, they will be willing to give the money. That's why they exist.
Exactly.
So they will be willing to give the money. From the local banks, we can get that money. Or if the federal government can do nothing about this steel, if there are so much politics, sell it to Nigerians, to local buyers, and they will be able to turn that thing around and make money out of it.
Exactly.
Look, everything around us, including the so-called manufacture of cars, which policy they have not really, it has not become a law. It's just a policy. The auto industry,
Yes.
yeah, they need steel. Everything needs steel.
So every technological manufacturer you can think about in the world
needs steel. So that will be a project that we have. In fact, Ajaokuta will have ready buyers of our products, and anybody will be willing to pump money into that because they know they will get their money back.
Yeah.
So it's just a political.
Because there are some sectors that are not as viable as this steel company. So they can remove money from those areas and throw it inside there where you can generate something positive for the country.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We have been talking about reviving the Ajaokuta Steel Company as a panacea for Nigeria's industrial development and, of course, to compete, in the steel industries around with the rest of the world, so that Nigeria can get foreign exchange, especially now that the economy is not looking too bright. It's on that note that we'll come to the end of today's edition of Money Radio. I've been joined in the studio by Kes Hammond. Thank you for joining us, Kes.
Thanks.
And Paulo Wadima, it's always a pleasure having you on the studio. Thank you so much for joining us. And we draw the curtains on today's edition. We promise to bring you a fresh edition when next we come. Stay blessed. Goodbye.